What is the difference between the conscious and the subconscious mind? I want you to think of the conscious mind as the logical, critical, analytical part of the mind. It is rational, it thinks sequentially, so in timeline sense, and it's that part of the mind that we use when we are strategizing, thinking ahead, focusing on a specific task at hand. When we are learning something new, it is present moment awareness. On the other hand, the subconscious mind is operating largely automatically. It's happening in the background, and it is the storehouse of everything that we have ever experienced. It is a storehouse of our beliefs, of our thought patterns, of our emotions, and ultimately dictates 95% of how we show up in the world, of our cognitive activity, which is our beliefs, thoughts, feelings, and our behaviors. It makes predictions based on what has happened in the past. So it makes future predictions about what's happened in our past, and it actually learns concurrently. So let's say you touch a flame, it's hot, it knows that it's bad, and therefore it learns immediately in the moment, unlike it being a long timeline sequential type of learning like the conscious mind. I've always found it really interesting that people will say I am more of a logical person or an emotional person. The truth is that we are all highly emotional. Our subconscious is our emotional self and is what we're operating from, like I said, 95% of the time. So if you're wanting to work with the subconscious, you need to understand the language that it speaks, which is emotions. Therefore, if you are wanting to call something into your life or experience it more of something, you need to understand how that thing will actually make you feel and start to tap into the somatic sensations and the body awareness, the feelings, so that you can get clarity around what it is that you want, how that's going to make you feel. And the more that you can actually create safety around what it is that you want, the quicker that you will have the experiences that you want in life. We're speaking a little bit about manifestation unintentionally here, but ultimately let's give the example of you are wanting more money in your life. If you tap into your body and you get really quiet and you feel into, okay, what would it feel like in my body if I was to get $1 million right now? If you start to constrict and to shut down and to get tight and tense, that's a signal that there is potentially some limiting beliefs around that thing. So you want to work on feeling potentially open, free, and expansive, and getting clear on those feelings and the somatic sensations that you would like to be experiencing when you are to receive abundance. The subconscious is the part of you that is operating on autopilot. You weren't aware of your feet on the ground or your bum on the seat or your hands on the steering wheel until I have said it in this moment right now, because your subconscious mind is operating those things on autopilot. The subconscious mind is able to absorb 11 million bits of information per second. Sound, noise, light, all of these different bits of information, whereas your conscious mind can only process 134 bits per second. That is wild indifference. I want you to imagine someone throwing 11 million toothpicks at you and you only being able to catch 134 of them. That is what you're consciously aware of. And we're going to get into a little bit more of how we can actually change and shift to see and to hyper focus on what 134 bits of information that we're actually focusing on, as opposed to the 134 bits that we're currently focusing on, which are dictated by our belief systems and by what's going on within our subconscious mind. From a neuroscience perspective, the subconscious mind is deeply tied to the limbic system, which is that emotional center of the brain, which makes sense. As I've said, the subconscious is responsible for that emotional state. It's connected to your deepest desires and your long held and formed beliefs. And the subconscious mind is acting more like a record playing on repeat, continuing to repeat the same behaviors and patterns, because it ultimately, the subconscious, loves what is familiar because what is familiar is what is safe. It determines safety purely based on familiarity because it simply wants you to stay alive. It believes that everything that it has been doing up until now has kept you alive, therefore it's done its job, which that is true. But ultimately, we want to or have a desire to start working with the subconscious and start reprogramming the subconscious because we find ourselves in situations where the beliefs that we've once held and created in childhood aren't always actually in alignment and don't support us to have the things that we're now consciously desiring in our life. Let's say that you grew up and you were surrounded by partnerships, relationships, friendships that never worked out. It always ended in fighting and chaos, and now you're struggling to find friendships or partnerships because you're repeating the same pattern because you've formed the same beliefs from what you've witnessed. However, you have this desire to have long-lasting, loving relationships in your life. We need to go back and look at those beliefs that are familiar and make them unfamiliar and create beliefs that are more congruent with what it is that you're actually wanting to call in, such as potentially, I am lovable, I am capable of creating and maintaining healthy, nourishing relationships, you name it. I think the best way to visualize the conscious and subconscious mind is something that I'm sure all of us are aware of by now, which is Freud's iceberg theory. I've tweaked this a little bit and I'm going to invite you to look at it like a tree. The subconscious mind is the roots. It's, digging down deep into the earth beneath. It's all of these little branches of roots shooting off underneath it. The things that we can't see, it's relying on nourishment of the environment around them in order to push through the earth and to begin to flourish. So the conscious is the things that we can see externally, the leaves, the branches, the trunk of the tree itself, but the subconscious and what's going on underneath is actually supporting the tree to flourish in a certain way, and it's going to actually dictate how the tree flourishes. If you think of the earth and the soil, if the roots aren't able to absorb what it needs in order to thrive and flourish, then it's not going to happen. And I think that's a great way of looking at it because consciously what you're seeing and experiencing, you're not going to be in a state of flourishing if there are extreme limiting beliefs, patterns, emotions, and behaviors going on underneath the surface, aka the roots aren't getting the nourishment that is required in order for the tree to flourish. You can look at it whatever way lands for you. If you want to look at it the iceberg, which is the conscious mind is the tip at the top that you can see, and then the subconscious is this mammoth iceberg that is underneath the surface that is basically creating this little top part, or you can look at it as the tree. That is all for today's session on the difference between the conscious and the subconscious mind. I hope that this information has been supportive to give you a reference point before we dive into the rest of the course.